Hello and welcome to the Surveillance for MongoDB webcast. Ed Stengel will be our presenter today, and my name is Tim Joseph. We are pleased to have a couple of upcoming webinars. September 21st, database auditing and security, and October 11th, Bradmark Surveillance 5.2 new features. So if you can join us for those, that would be great. Today's webinar program, welcome and introductions. That's where we are now. Like I say, my name is Tim Joseph. I'm the technical support manager for Bradmark Technologies. Ed Stengler will be our presenter, and he is the R&D guy, so we should have some interesting information presented about surveillance for MongoDB. The focus is to be MongoDB historical information, the way that surveillance is able to store and present information, flashback, and recent history to answer questions. Once Ed has finished his presentation, we'll have question and answer, and then we'll wrap up and close. So without further ado, Ed, turn it over to you.
All right, great. So we'll be showing today MongoDB with Bradmark surveillance monitoring for MongoDB, specifically talking about the historical metrics that the Bradmark surveillance product captures for the MongoDB database and how you can use that in your environment to improve performance in Mongo, and how you can get other valuable insight into the performance and availability of your databases. Now, Bradmark surveillance in general has a lot of different benefits across a wide variety of databases. We monitor relational databases and NoSQL databases. We can do web monitoring on premises or in the cloud or in containers. We provide great global web access to those database pieces of information, that performance monitoring data, that availability data, the alerting data. Lots of different things are available, reporting as well, available in a nice web interface that can be deployed either on premises or in the cloud. We have historical metrics for those databases, even if the database is offline. If you need to find out if there was a problem yesterday at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, or if there was a problem last week and you want to find out more about what was going on during that time period, we have quick access to that kind of recent history. And then we also have access to longer term historical metrics as well. We have a lot of reporting in Bradmark surveillance, specifically for compliance and also for operational use. We have reports that can be generated large or small to track auditing information, for example, SQL information. You can generate reports on bad logins, schema changes, admin commands, and a lot of other things in order to satisfy security, privacy requirements, or even operational requirements. And also for each database, we have unique metrics for more in-depth analysis. Of course, we have a broad range of things that we can do across the different databases, but we also have unique metrics for each one. So for Mongo, for example, we have specific things for Mongo like collection information and other types of global statistics like op counters and things like that that show more in-depth information about what's going on in your MongoDB. And you can do use those metrics for real-time monitoring, for alerting, for historical information, and it provides you more insight into those particular databases. Now, we have some notable features in Bradmark surveillance in general, like time slicing. We also call this recent history. And this is the kind of thing where we can see, okay, what was the top SQL between 3 o'clock yesterday and 4 o'clock yesterday? We can see the top SQL or the top commands in the case of Mongo that are the most impactful. We can look at that all sorts of different ways by elapsed time and CPU time and things like that. Or we could take a look at what's the most impactful command for each hour of the day yesterday. So if there's a particular command that runs for a short amount of time, but it's running every different hours of the day, you can find the total impact of that throughout the day and help find the ones that are the most impactful to the database. We have our flashback feature, which allows us to take our real-time interface and go back in time, so you can see the commands that we're running at a particular point in time. You can see the connections that were going on at that particular time. You can help correlate the information with our flashback information, and you can go back yesterday, last week, a few weeks ago even, and easily see that information very quickly right there and then. We also have web reporting, which takes the longer-term historical data. So we can send the data to a real database, for example, a SQL Server or something like that, and you can easily generate web reporting for months or years of data as well. We also have audit reporting, which allows us to take the audit information from Mongo, for example, and look at the bad logins, the schema changes, and other types of information available, and generate nice reports in PDF format, in web format, things like that. We also have better security compliance than other particular products in this area. We have a lot of use of encryption with TLS. We do a lot of compliance with the product for things like PCI DSS and network scanning and things like that. So if you need to deploy this product, it's a hardened product that you can deploy in environments that require that kind of level of compliance and hardening that's going on. You can also look at our alerts dashboard, which has a red, yellow, green kind of status of the different alerts that may be outstanding and different servers and different databases that are out there. Now, surveillance for NoSQL is something that we've done more recently. Now, our products have been monitoring relational databases for many years, and we have a lot of experience on those relational databases, things like SAP ASC and SQL Server and Oracle. But we brought that extensive innovative monitoring technologies to NoSQL now. So we cover, of course, all the critical areas that you'd expect in a monitoring product. We have where it's currently running with the important details that you need, what's been slow in the past, and why has it been slow yesterday or last week. We have space usage, hot objects, and replication activities. So in the case of Mongo, that's going to be replica sets. But we actually show nicely the information about how it's replicating, the statuses, and things like that. We'll see that in a little while. We have all the critical features that we've done for relational databases we brought over to NoSQL products like Mongo. We have the alerting, we have uptime SLA reports that you can generate, PDF, of course, format, replication monitoring, as I mentioned. We have audit reports, so these can be small amount of reports or large reports. We have recent history or time slicing, our flashback feature is brought over, and of course long-term web reporting as well. Now, in addition to all of that, we have a lot of things that we've done to make it easier to use Brandmark surveillance with NoSQL databases. We have easy setup. We try to do lightweight dependencies whenever possible, so that it's easier to deploy the product with your database. Of course, we can monitor the database on that machine, or we can monitor the database remotely on another machine. It's up to you how you want to set that up. We include all the dependencies we might need to get going, especially with NoSQL databases. A lot of them have a lot of extra dependencies that, because of the nature of the software versus traditional relational software. So we've made sure to make that as easy as possible to deploy. We have the deep dive metrics that are sometimes difficult to obtain in some of these NoSQL databases. We go and find information through a lot of different sources. In some databases, in some NoSQL databases, for example, we'll go out to the Java system and get some things from the Java system. In the case of Mongo, we get things from several different sources in Mongo. And we correlate all that information and we give it more meaning for you in our output that we show in real time and in reporting, and to provide as much drill down information as we can as well to enhance your experience with the different databases. Now, of course, there are several different categories of NoSQL. Document stores is what MongoDB is, and that includes unstructured data like JSON and things like that. We have the graph databases like Neo4j and other types of NoSQL databases as well. But today, of course, we'll be talking about MongoDB. And surveillance for MongoDB has been monitoring for a while now. And we have, of course, MongoDB, just to give a little background for those who in the audience who may not be familiar with Mongo, we have Mongo's document store, so things like JSON for applications, those kind of unstructured data that's, if you're familiar with how JSON looks like, that's being stored in the databases. Instead of SQL statements that you might have in a relational database, we have commands in Mongo, and there's different ways of looking at the commands, but traditionally, at the lowest level, they're basically JSON, pieces of JSON. And then collections are the basic unit of items in Mongo instead of, say, tables in relational databases. Now, Mongo comes in on-premises flavors and on the cloud in the Atlas offering. They also have, of course, we support either one. We have there's a community edition and the enterprise edition of Mongo. If you want some features of Mongo like auditing, for example, that would require enterprise edition. And we do critical and extensive monitoring of MongoDB. Specifically in the historical area of monitoring, we're not limited to just 24 hours of history with limited metrics, which you might find in another solution that maybe comes out of the box or in other solutions. 24 hours is just not enough history. So we provide weeks of recent history for the important details. So for the flashback, for the recent history, being able to see a lot of critical things you might need in operationally, we provide days and weeks worth of data available right there and then in a compressed form and really very convenient to access. And if you want to store the data even longer, of course, we can set up a central repository database, a real database, and store and analyze weeks and years of history of data available in there. And we don't charge per gigabyte of storage of the historical metrics. With included in the product is the ability to store and analyze the amount of historical data that you want to keep that's available in your in terms of the space of your database. For example, an essential database. Now, the kinds of just a quick sample of what we can do with MongoDB. This is an example of the top collection activity. So here we're looking at the collection activity for this Mongo system over a period of time. This was about a 24-hour period, and you can see here oplog rs is the top collection activity. We have the total amount of query time, the total amount of command time is executed against this particular collection. And down at the bottom, we have more statistics that spell it out about get more information and command time and updates, inserts, removes, lock times, things like that are available. So this is the kind of recent history information that we can pull out to give you a little bit more insight into what's going on in the hot objects, for example, in this case. Now, there's a lot of different areas in Mongo that we monitor, and some of them include what we call global statistics, and that includes high-level statistics like CPU percent, op counters, so the whole breakdown of op counters into the different types of op counters that are available. We have information on cache usage and activity, active sessions counts, connections, locks, memory usage, all those kinds of things, and much more as well available. So these are the more high-level items that you can actually also get history on as well. We also have an area of monitoring for RS members or replica set information. So if you have a replica set up, a replicate set set up, you can get information on the latency of the members, the uptime of the members. You can get various pieces of information on the heartbeat stuff, so like the latency heartbeat and other things, as well as the error message. If there is an error message, we show that as well conveniently in that window. And that window is something that you can see real time, and of course you can flash back on that as well. We have information on locks, and of course we also mine the error log for any types of interesting information. We have information on connections, so all the information you'd expect on the connections, who's out there, what they're executing, where they're coming from, that kind of stuff, and the connections information. We have currently executed commands, so another way of looking at the information, we can see what's currently out there executing and see the full command text available on that. We have database space usage information, so the traditional, what's filling up and how much is being used. We also have the settings in the MongoDB. We actually can show the settings that are changed versus the default settings. And of course, collection activity to show where the hot objects are on the particular database, showing you broken down by the different types of operations on those collections. We also have recent history. So a lot of that stuff I said before was in real time, but we also have recent history that's available for a particular time range. And you can see the top commands during that time range, so a particular 2 or 3 hour period or a 24-hour period. You can see the top collection activity, and you can get some details on that kind of information. We can also take a look at it by hour of day. So if you have a particular command that's running throughout the day, or you want to see the collection activity throughout the day, broken down by 8 a.m., 9 a.m., p.m., those kinds of things throughout the day, you can easily see that as well, which is useful, especially for example, shorter commands or collections that are a short amount of time, but at a particular time, but used heavily throughout the day. Now, just a little bit of some technical things about how we work with Mongo. We support Mongo's 3.6 all the way to the latest 7.0 that was just released. We connect to it using a various MongoDB C driver, and we have a connection way of connecting that's pretty easy to set up. And the actual permissions required for the Mongo connection are pretty minimal and what you'd expect from this kind of stuff, as well as there's additional permissions. Like if you want to actually terminate a command, which you can do through the interface, you can terminate a command and terminate a connection. Those kinds of things require, of course, additional privileges that are very easy to set up. Now, a little bit about the command format, since we're going to be looking at that in a moment. We show the native commands in things like the current executing statements window. The native commands in Mongo are in BSON format, which is an extension of JSON. So, for example, you can see here, it looks like the JSON kind of document, but there's a few little extensions to it that are in Mongo. And that particular one that we're seeing in the middle of the screen is the equivalent of the Mongo client command at the bottom of the screen. Mongo client commands are kind of a shorthand, really, in reality, for the real command that gets executed by Mongo. So the item on the bottom where we say db.tempdatabases.aggregate, for example, and then so and so gets turned into a native command like you see in the middle, which looks more like a JSON document. So if you're familiar with the Mongo client, it's actually just a JavaScript shell. And starting with 4.4, they replaced the older stuff with Mongo SH, which is a new Node.js utility. So most commands are actually JavaScript that you run. And if you actually look at, for example, db.aggregate, you can see the Java code that's running in the Mongo shell. And as I said before, the command that you execute actually gets executed as a native command on Mongo. And the reason that's important also is that we have the ability to extend the Brad Mark surveillance product. So if is there a particular type of information in Mongo that we're not getting, you can easily extend the product with your own scripts that get more information from Mongo and can display it and show it and archive it and alert off of it. So anything you do in the product, what we call a user-defined collection, a UDC, gets turned into a first-class kind of object in the product, and then you can do all those things to it. And so to help with that, we emulate a few of the commands that you'd be used to in the Mongo client. So for example, like the use command and the admin command, the run command, those kinds of things are emulated in our UDC systems, so you can easily bring over your scripts and help turn that into a real collection in our product, and then you can then see that in a window or do an alert off of it or archive that data as well. We automatically build the results from that, which is also kind of difficult, but we go ahead and do that and make it very easy to turn the output from your own script into something in the product as well. Now, audit reports is another great thing that we produce in Brad Mark Surveillance. We produce great audit reports in PDF and web format, and we do it in several areas. There's two types of reports that we do in auditing. We do compliance auditing and operational auditing. Operational auditing is more just kind of day-to-day kind of things, like if you want to see commands that are running. It may not, be for compliance purposes, but it's something that we can get to fairly easy on our reporting. But for compliance auditing, of course, you need to turn on actual real auditing in Mongo. And with real auditing in Mongo, then we can produce reports that cover things from bad logins to schema or DDL changes to admin commands. These reports that we generate can be small or it can be giant reports. If you need a 5,000-page report, we can do that, no problem. And there's many filter criteria you can set on the audit reports as well. So there's a lot of ways that you can slice and dice the information to produce the kind of report that you need. Now, we're not going to be actually showing a report today, but we will be showing a report in our upcoming webinar that we mentioned earlier, called the Database Auditing and Security with Brad Mark Surveillance webinar that's coming up. So if you want to see an example of the MongoDB audit reports, you definitely want to check out our upcoming webinar, where we're going to be showing audit reports from a lot of different databases, actually, and talking about some of the things that you can get out of it and how that will really benefit you to see that kind of information. But definitely check out that webinar coming up for the audit reports from Mongo. We also have web reports in general for the product for Mongo. Now, as I mentioned, the metrics can be stored for months and years in a central repository database. This is a real database like a SQL Server, or Oracle, whatever. And we can provide the web reports. There's a lot of different types of ways to do it. We can do it daily, hourly, monthly, see all the gory details if you'd like. And we have in many different areas. So the global statistics, of course, things like the CPU percent, the op counters, you can see that graph. You can see averages, maximum, minimums throughout the day, those kinds of things. You can generate that on an hourly basis and other types of time periods. We have, of course, database usage because you want to see the database space usage trending over the different months, different time periods. We also have collection activity and, of course, top commands as well for the longer term. So rather than just the last 24 hours, if you want to go longer term, you can see that as well. So now we're going to go into a demo of what MongoDB looks like and how we store that historical information and show that. So now we're going to go ahead and log into the Brandmark Surveillance product. This is our web client. I'm going to log in. And we can see here, we automatically see a list of all the different databases that we're monitoring. This is a larger environment for us, a little bit larger test environment. And we can see the different types of databases that are out there. And I have a couple of different Mongos that are monitoring here. In addition to seeing the particular databases that we can connect to, we can see a little badge here that shows alerts that are outstanding. So you can see I have one system that's in really bad shape. He's offline. And then I have a couple of systems that have a few warnings out there. 5 errors on this one, 2 warnings on this one, that kind of stuff. So you can see quickly at a glance if there's an issue in terms of real-time alerting on here, as well as in the upper right corner, we can also see the number of outstanding alerts, and we'll go back to that in just a moment. But first, let's go ahead and take a look and click on our Mongo instance here. This is a Mongo 4.4, but of course we work with later versions and earlier versions. And here we can see a list of different views that are available, real-time views that are available for monitoring Mongo. We have our global window. This is going to be high-level statistics that are available for the instance, so we can see things like active sessions. And here we have an 8-hour history of the active sessions that are going on. So you can see we've had a little bit of activity. This is not a very active database, but we can see a little bit of activity that has happened. We have a lot of different areas that we cover, things like cache usage, used percent. You can see that. You can see the cache usage has been going up a little bit, quite a bit actually, in the last few hours. We can see the dirty percent. We can see CPU overall percent. You can see here we were a pretty quiet system, and then we got a little bit of activity, and then a little bit of a lull, and then some more activity. And we have documents per second. Again, this is broken down into the different types of operations. We have inserted documents, return documents. We could actually sit here if we wanted to concentrate on one of these other ones, because right here inserted per second is kind of dominant in what we're seeing here. We can also remove this from the graph and then look at something. For example, now we're looking at a lower value for documents returned per second, and then we can remove that if we wanted to concentrate on other things. So with this, you can sit there and concentrate on other types of values that are in this graph as well. So we have things like CPU percent, we have documents per second, we have memory information, network throughput, locks information. We can go down to op counters. So here we have op counters going on. And again, this is the inserts per second were kind of dominant, so we could remove this if we wanted to concentrate if we wanted to on commands per second or queries per second or things like that. But it's all broken down nicely so that you can see, for example, at this particular time in the past 8 hours, it's this particular value. We also have that for op counters REPL, and we have query executor information, transactions per second. So a lot of different top-level information, and being able to see the last 8 hours of this. Now, of course, if we want to go back further, that's also a way to do that. We can use our flashback feature. So up here at the upper left corner, we have a little calendar control. We can hit flashback, and we can go back to, let's say, for example, yesterday at this time period, tell it to go. Now, on this, what's going on here now is that all these values have been updated for yesterday at this particular time period. And at the bottom now, we now are looking at this time yesterday. We're looking at the graph at the bottom. That's the last 8 hours of that information. Now, at that time, we didn't have as much activity. It was a much more idle system. So you can see now that the values have gone much lower. And go ahead, let me bring that back here. So now you can see we have a little bit different spread of the op counters of the inserts versus the commands per second here. And if we go back, for example, to CPU percent, we can see how that is as well. And you can see it's much lower amount of CPU percent than we saw earlier. And this is broken down by user time and system time, and we can remove one if we needed to concentrate on that, for example. So with our flashback feature, we can go back to that particular time period of yesterday. We can also move throughout the day. So for example, here I'm going to move forward 60 minutes, or about an hour. We're going to move forward here. All the values have updated here, and then the the values are updated and the graph is updated as well. So I can easily step through this if I wanted to do this by 10 minutes at a time, 60 minutes at a time, or I could jump to another particular time again, or I can return to the present by flashing right back to the present. So here we are back to the present now, and you can see again now we had a bit of more activity earlier going on. So in addition to the global statistics that we see, we're looking at a real time and also recent history, the last 8 hours worth, and then being able to flash back as well. We can also see connection information out there. So for example, here we have 2 connections out there at the moment, and we can see, the connection ID, we can see the application information. If we scroll over to the right here, we can see information on lock information, lock weight, latches. And if we scroll all the way over to the right here, we can see where these particular connections are coming from. So like the IP address, the OS information, the username, those kinds of things. And when we click on the particular connection, we can see the command text. So as I mentioned earlier, that we're showing the native command text to Mongo, which is in JSON format typically. Go ahead and refresh this. So we have this kind of information. And again, the same kind of things are available. We can go back and flashback. So if I want to flashback, for example, to an hour ago, I can go flashback to an hour ago and see this information. Now, of course, we didn't have anything else going on at that particular time. I'll go ahead and switch to a little bit different time period here. I'll move forward about 25 minutes. And now you can see here at that particular time, we had a different piece of activity going on. Here we had a collection zip codes there was a lot of activity going on against that particular collection at that time period. So the command text, the connection information, all that is available in that local history that's available for several days, several weeks worth of data that's available for flashback and recent history purposes. And then we can easily flash forward to the present again. Similarly, if we want to look at it by command type, by commands that are running, we can easily do that too. Here again is a command that's currently running, and we don't currently have much running at the moment, but I can easily go back again to this time period a little while ago and see that this zip codes collection again was being hit with some activity about a little while ago. And we can see the information about the username who's executing it. We can scroll over here and see more information about the lock situation, the weight information, and of course also the information about where it's coming from, the IP address and things, the port numbers and those kinds of things to help you track down where that particular one is coming from if there's an issue. Of course, all this information can be saved off. You can save it off to a spreadsheet, copy it to the clipboard, get all this kind of information if you need to be able to help move it around. And as I mentioned before, you can also kill a particular session or command. So here I can, for example, I could kill this operation, and then when it does that, it request more information, the username and password with privileges to be able to actually kill this operation if I need to. So you have a little bit of ability to manage the commands that are out there as well. Now we also have information on locks. We have information on space usage. So here we have the different databases and their file system usages and various information. If we scroll to the right about index counts and object counts and things like that, file system size. And again, this is available for flashback. It's available for recent history items and also longer term history. We can send this off. So if you want to do your own SQL statements, your own reporting against this, you can easily do that as well. We have collection activity. So here we have the top collections that are being hit, and we can see that broken down. In this case, it's a pretty idle system, so we have uplog RS being hit the most, but we can see that broken down by queries, get mores, write locks, all sorts of things like that. We also have information on replication. So RS members information is out there. So here we have a replica set with two members. I have one that's okay, and I have one that's not having such a good day. He's recovering a lot. But you can see here the kinds of information we show for the replica members. We have the latency information. We have various informations on heartbeat. And you can see we have a little bit of history available here. Again, you can flash this back as well to see other types of history in these graphs. The amount of time since last heartbeat. And if we scroll over here, we can also get the heartbeat messages. So this will be where the error message would be if there's a particular type of error message to diagnose. So with this, you can see at a glance what's going on with the replica set. You can also get alerted off of all of this stuff as well. So you can get alerts if the replica's items are having trouble, if there's degrading performance, those kinds of things are available as alerts. So, and speaking of alerts, if we go over to the alert system here, we can see the kinds of alerts that are available. outstanding there. You can see here we have the kind of red, yellow, green items that are available. And if we look at the Mongo items here, you can see, for example, we have an alert about connection information that we just kind of artificially set load in order to generate alert. And from here, you can easily see the alert, and you can actually go ahead and jump back to that window. You can jump to that window and flash back to that particular point in time. So we have an integrated experience with the historical information and the alerting. You can easily go back and see that information. It would bring up this particular thing at that particular point in time. So here we are. So this is the global window that we're in that was related to, because the alert was on connections. The number of connections was exceeded our threshold. So we've actually gone to the global window, and then we've flashed back to that particular point in time. And then I can look at things like the CPU information. I can look at connection information, because this is the connection that I was concerned about. So, for example, you can see the connections available and the number of connections. You can see if you're really running out of connections, and you can see other pieces of information. And if you wanted to, you could actually open up the connections window and things like that. Up here we have various tabs you can open up and create, and you could correlate that with other pieces of information in the product at that particular point in time using the locally stored recent history. And then, of course, you could also flash back to the present as well. So in addition to the real-time and the alerting that we see, we also have other recent history reports that we can run. We have, for example, recent history for commands that we can run. So, for example, we'll go back and say, for the last 2 hours, I want to see what's the most impactful commands in this particular database. At the top, we have a CPU graph that shows the kind of the activity, what's going on. And so that's interesting, but we'll go ahead and collapse that for now and take a look at just the commands. So here we can see that the command with the most elapsed time was actually these commands that have been running against our zip codes collection. So we can see the full SQL text for that, the command text for that, excuse me. We can see more information about the details of whatever is available. We can also take a look at what connection IDs we're executing against that particular command, the command against the zip codes collection. So you can see during this particular 2-hour time period, we have these two connections with these usernames that were executing that particular command during that time period. So you can use this to investigate particular issues or particular performance issues that are going on at a particular time period. You can also see that with collection activity as well. So if you want to see it in terms of collections rather than commands, you can do that. And you can also take a look in terms of by hour of day. So for example, we could take a look at a 24-hour time period, for example, and we can see what are the hottest collections during this particular 24-hour period. So here we can see that like the colors represent a particular statement. So in this case, the green represents the oplog RS collection, and at the bottom I can click on it and get more information about the query time, the get more time, the IO inserts, updates, the lock information, things like that. If I want to concentrate on something other than that one because it's kind of dominating the graph, I can go ahead and take that off and take a look at a different type of collection. Or I can take a few of these off, and let's say I want to look at zip codes here. Zip codes, you see, has been mostly active during the 9 to 11 o'clock time period. So I click on that, and I can see more information on that particular one as well. And now this is by time of executed time against that collection. We can also take a look at it in terms of query time only. We can take a look at it in terms of command time, maybe relock time, for example. So in relock time, it looks like this, or write lock time, and various other ways as well. So a lot of different ways to slice and dice the historical information for the hottest collection objects. Now, this is, of course, for recent history. So this is like, a few days, a few weeks worth of data, but we can also take a look at longer-term history. So if we come over here to our web reporting system, you can see here we have Mongo web reporting, and here we have a lot of different areas that you can generate reports, everything from auditing to database space usage to global. The global has the CPU percent, the op counters, things like that, as well as the collection activity and some other areas as well. And if we go on here, we won't be generating a report right now, but you can see the kinds of things that you can do. You can go back and specify time period, and you can do this, a few days ago, a few months ago. You can go back to, last year at July and do it from here if you want to. So you have a lot of ability to go back months, back years to get this kind of information. And in this particular window, we would be seeing the CPU, like for example, the CPU percent maybe graphed over several different hours, and we would see the average, hourly maximum, hourly minimum for the CPU, as well as other types of metrics. You could show app counters and different things, the different components of the app counters as well. The inserts versus other things, for example, are available in this report, and this report can be generated here to the web as well as to a PDF as well. So here we have, between the short-term history, the recent history, and the longer-term history, you have a more fuller view of what's going on in the particular Mongo system. So now, if you'd like to try this for yourself, you can actually go to our demo website, which is listed right here on the URL. We're actually, I would check it maybe starting next week because we're currently under some maintenance at the moment, but we'll available next week. I would suggest going in there, and then you could try it for yourself. There's generally activity generated between these particular time periods, and the information for login is at the bottom as well. Okay, now I think we'll open it up for Q&A.
Yeah, that's great. Any questions? I think you have a button you can press to register a question. Here's one. In monitoring, can you monitor remotely and also on the same server as where our surveillance server agents are running?
Yeah, we definitely can do that. We can monitor remotely or on the same system. If it's on the same system, that's better, of course, because a little bit more reliable because you don't have to worry about network issues. We can also have better access to the error log. It may be a requirement for auditing depending on things as well. So there's a few cases where it may be required to be on the same system as the database, but if that's a sensitive area, of course, you can always run it remotely as well. The licensing is based off of where the database based on the database itself. So what we're monitoring is very flexible and it can be anywhere that you want it to be. But again, there's some advantages to running it locally.
Thank you, Ed.
And I see another question on here. There's a question about which versions it runs on. Okay, so as I mentioned before, it runs on Mongo 3.6 all the way to the latest 7.0. Of course, different versions have different features. So, we support, like in the 3.6 version, there's a few things that are missing in there, so we don't support that. But in the later versions, of course, we support the latest and greatest, and we try to add features that are specific to that. So as you get to newer versions, you get more and more things. And it's it expands the availability features, and also it also depends on the edition, of course. So as I mentioned before, there's community edition and enterprise edition. So enterprise edition is required for auditing. So there's a couple of things that we can do for enterprise edition versus community edition.
Yeah, here's one, Ed. The question is about evolving data schemas and the historical repository. So if over time the schema is changing and you return to report information from the repository, I guess that's going to be from the schema in a prior time. So does everything stay synced up? Are you able to gather information without having to do expensive joins?
Well, we support our schema on our central repository database, so it's fully open and you can use it for your any types of SQL or reporting that you want to do against it. And we tend to keep it, it tends to evolve in a way that's compatible. So there shouldn't be any problems in terms of the evolution of the schema for that. And if there is, we provide a lot of information on how to migrate and to upgrade and things like that. So we try to make it as easy as possible to keep that, because that's a lot of data. That's a lot of data in the central repository. So we realize that even, for example, when you go from our Surveillance 4 product to our Surveillance 5 product, which is more of a migration, even for that, we expect that the central repository is something that you'll be keeping throughout that whole thing. So we go through a lot to make sure that that's going to be compatible going forward.
Thanks, Ed.
Okay, another question. It's not about historical metrics, but it's about alerting here. The question is about, can you send alerts from Mongo to email? Yeah, the answer is, of course, yes. The alerting is available for all sorts of different actions. We didn't go into that today, but basically, a lot of things that we can do for other products, for other databases, we can do for Mongo. Of course, we can send email, SNMP traps. We can call out to web applications. We can run scripts. All the kinds of things you'd expect from a product we can do with the alerting on the Mongo, as well as we also have ways you can also script our own product and do other things too. So we have a lot of different advanced actions or simple actions, however you want to do it, that are available for that.
Here's another one. I think you covered it a little bit, but was there a discussion of replication and that type of data model?
Right. Yeah, we have replica set monitoring, as you saw on our RS members window. So you can get alerting off of when members are having problems, if there's availability issues, if there's degradation of the performance, latency information, that kind of stuff is all alertable, and also historical information is available for that as well. We do support replica sets. We don't support sharding at the moment, but we do support replica for monitoring for all the different aspects of the product.
Right, and there was a follow-up specifically about memory and use. Is that a metric that is clearly shown by surveillance and apparently better if things work within available memory?
Yes, we do show in the global window, we do show memory usage, so that's clearly shown over there.
And that's historically available, you can see over time, etc.
You bet, you bet.
There's a question about indices. Do we get into tuning and displaying those types of metrics?
No, we don't have tuning recommendations currently in the Mongo product. We do show information about some things about indexes, and of course we show the command text and everything, but we don't do any recommendations currently.
Well, it sounds like it would have the query patterns available though. As you're saying, you see the selects and the commands that are being executed.
Right. Yeah, we just don't do recommendations currently. We just try to give you the tools that you need to figure out more about what's going on with the system.
I see we have a question here. Is there an express version of the product? In other words, are there different levelings for the metrics and monitoring provided?
Yes, there is an express version of the product that has the limited metrics, primarily the global window, and I think the current execute statements. But there is an express version of this, like we do for all the databases.
And in terms of the client interface, it's web-based primarily, or are there any other tools that the client would run?
We definitely our main interface is our web client interface, which is HTML5 web client, based on Angular actually. And then we also have a legacy Windows client, as well as a text console program for scripting capability, and a lot of other different tools are available as well for interacting with the product. So, there's a lot of different ways to get data for the product, and so if there's a particular way to integrate that you need, we can easily do that. As well as on the alerting side, you can also integrate with a lot of different alerting systems that you might have, any any of our existing systems for alerts. We can also integrate on that side as well. So a lot of different ways to integrate, from data going in to the data going out. A lot of different things that are available.
Thanks very much, Ed. Well, I think that closes things out from the questions that I see here. Unless anyone has anything further, we might move along to our conclusion then. We appreciate very much everyone joining us today. And don't forget the upcoming webinars if you choose to join. September 21st, database auditing and security, and October 11th, Broadmark surveillance 5.2 new features. So thank you very much, everyone, for joining today. Thank you, Ed, for presenting the slides and answering the questions. And thank you, everyone, for joining.